Everybody, how you doing? I am Chase Jarvis, co-founder of CreativeLIVE, and I'm emceeing this thing over these 2 days where we are learning the secrets of Silicon Valley from some of the best minds in business. I feel so lucky. I've been on the main stage over there, and now I'm in the backstage area, one of the places where I feel really, really comfortable. We're going to get to sit down and chat with someone who I have a huge amount of respect for. I just met Brian about, it's about a year ago. I've been a fan of his work for a long time. He wrote a book a while back called The End of Business as Usual, which was very transformative for me and a lot of other folks. It sold off the shelves like it's going out of style, and we're here today with him. He was very gracious, and we stole 30 minutes of his time to talk about his new book, which I am interested to dive deep on because I have not read it, which is usually I devour his stuff when it comes on. I'm a subscriber to his blog and all that stuff. This is What's the Future of Business, and so without further ado, please join me in giving a huge round of applause from the in-studio audience and you folks over there in Tanzania and Canada and Argentina. Big round of applause for Brian Solis. Come on, buddy. This is your seat right there.
All right.
For the next, I don't know, I think I get you for 30 minutes before you get whisked off in a private jet to go. No,
Absolutely, yeah,
Right.
That's just how I roll, or fly.
Fly. Nice to see you, man.
Nice to see you.
So, can I see that book for a second? Because I'm gonna hold it up here for a second. So, fancy pants, love it. I saw the early design. You remember when we were talking with our friends at Mechanism? So tell me about the transition between the End of Business as Usual and the new book. Like, talk about how, you know, where the End of Business End of Business as Usual left you, and this new sort of project that you're nose into.
You know, by day, I'm an analyst. I study digital trends, disruptive technology, its impact on business. Mm-hmm. And nights and weekends, I like to think of myself as like an aspiring digital anthropologist. You know, looking at how tech is affecting us as human beings, mm-hmm. right? And what you find out is that the effect on business that technology is having is a direct result of the effect it's having on consumerism, just everyday behavior. And if you can find out the gap mm-hmm. and what it takes to bring those two worlds together, you learn a lot. And so as I was thinking about the new book, I thought, man, you know, you take off the sleeve that wraps a business book cover, and you have a book that looks like every other book out there. You know, same hardcover, same paper, mm-hmm. font. I thought, you know, look, if I am going to talk about the future of technology and consumerism, why would I write another business book that looks like everything else out there? I can't even sit through a business book as a reader, right. let alone try to write another one like that. So I started to study user experience. Mm-hmm. And I realized that this was an opportunity to show people that not only are things different, mm-hmm. but as they turn the page, they're actually witnessing and becoming part of this revolution. So I decided to take a whole inventive approach where writing the book would be the easy part, but redesigning what a business book or a book could be would be a real wonderful opportunity to shake things up.
Well, we were talking about that at that conference out in, I wouldn't call it a conference, a private gathering, if you will, of smart people out in the desert east of LA there. And you've produced it now. That was just a sort of a fiction then, and now, so when people pick up that book, what can they expect in there?
Well, look, I'll tell you, the challenge I had with the book was going to a publisher that does things the same way every time and saying, hey, I got a great idea. How about we change the shape of the book, and why don't we put some real crazy thick paper in there and go full color, and let me do graphics, and let's get rid of the old concept of a table of contents. And let's just say that they weren't excited to hear that idea. And especially when you want to call the book What's the Future of Business with a big WTF on the cover of it, mm-hmm. it's not necessarily something else that they're looking for as business buyers.
So if you can I hijack that just for a second, that thought? Because to me, one of the things that I want here at CreativeLIVE, the reason we have creative in our name is because create is not necessarily we don't actually pause long enough to look at what the word create or creative means. It means to take something that wasn't in being and making it happen. And so it seems to me you approached this a lot like an artist. And I think for people that are science people or you're an analyst, like the idea of thinking creatively, it freaks people out. Like I'm not a painter. I do real work. I'm a math person. And increasingly, across our culture, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to inspire in the world, is the idea that no, we're all, it's the fundamental feature of being human is that we're creative, and creativity is the new literacy, if you will. And so a creative approach to a business book seems to be, like, do you think of yourself as an artist, is the short version. Do you think of yourself as someone who's creative in the approach that you took, not just with the format of the book, but the thinking behind it?
Man, so this is the type of philosophical discussion that I think the whole book is premised on, is that you have to challenge convention, not just for the sake of being a revolutionary, but because it's the right thing to do, especially now. You don't need to follow a template to tell your story if you see things from perspective, and if artistry is involved in that, then absolutely, but so is self-expression,
Yes.
right? And to me, artistry here was a function of communicating the point, right?
Yeah.
I'll share an example with you. You know, when this book first hit the market, there was a review that rubbed me the wrong way, and I think I pulled sort of like the equivalent of an Elon Musk reaction to the reporter.
You bought a space station?
No, well, exactly. It's sort of akin to his reaction to the New York Times review
Sure.
of the Tesla ad.
Tesla, yeah.
And the review said, look, we're going to give the book a B. You know, we're not going to give it an A, but we'll give it a B. It's a great book, but coming from Brian, as an analyst, we expected to see more case studies and more examples. And I reached out to the reporter and I said, you know, you are not the reader that I want for this book.
Don't read my book.
Don't
anymore.
read my book. And
But knowing who your customers are and knowing who your customers aren't is actually something really, really important. And be able,
Yeah.
as soon as you try and build something for everyone, you end up building something for no one, because it's like, it's half measures and you cut this and you went around this corner and all that stuff. So good for you for calling them out on it.
Yeah, well, I said, look, and this is important for all of us, and this is, you know, aside from the book itself, this is the bigger mission. What's your purpose? You know, what's your vision? Why are you here? And what are you trying to do? And my point was, look, I don't need to read or write another book that has the same old examples of people who you think are doing things right. This is a time for leadership, not management. This is a time for leaders, not followers. And this is equivalent to a blank canvas. You need to try something differently to reach people differently. That's the whole point of the design of the book, the whole way the presentation of the book. And if you can't see that, if you're not willing to operate in life without a template, then don't read this book, because then you won't even be able to finish it without calling it rubbish.
Right. The leaders, not followers thing is just so adroit. I feel like it's like you're right onto something there. I don't like think about our culture. I referenced this earlier. I hope it's not going to be redundant for anybody here in the audience or out there in the world. But I'm a big fan of Mark Echo. He's a street artist. You're probably familiar with his logo. It's a rhino. Amazing street artist. He went from like airbrushing shirts to creating his own clothing brand. And he's an amazing entrepreneur. I think it's $1 billion business now. So he's crushing it. More power to Mark. But I watched him talk to a group of people, and he said, okay, how many people here are founders? A bunch of people's hands went up. And how many people, if you're not a founder, you consider yourself an entrepreneur? A lot of people's hands went up. How many people here consider yourself an artist? No hands up. And he's like, that's a major problem. I have a major problem with that, because how many of you founders were walking in the woods and saw the thing fully made and picked it up and said, all right, Facebook, all right. None of them is the easy answer. So there's this creative process that has to happen. And when you think about leading rather than following, it really at its fundamental sort of core is making something. And you have to, when you make something that hasn't been made before, you're taking a leadership position. So I couldn't agree more with you that the idea of leading is like, it's probably crucial. Like we talk about innovation, we throw that word around so casually, but that's how you move something forward, and that's how you stand out in your field, and that's what you've done obviously with your book.
Yeah, look, there's I'm inspired by
Champagne, you told me that.
This is not a secret. I think if you look at my Instagram feed, it's probably 90% glasses of champagne, which is a sponsorship opportunity for any champagne houses out there. But in all reality, I'm inspired by the frustrations that people have, and more importantly by just the inability to sort of see clearly of how to solve it. Mm-hmm. I deal with that all the time. You know, whether it's trying to put this book out or trying to just accomplish things in a way that just haven't been done before. I don't I don't necessarily believe in orthodox practices just because they are orthodox. I don't believe in following a set of instructions because that was the way that somebody wrote it at a certain time in society. But I am a big believer, though, that in order to solve problems, you have to sort of not just be artistic or creative, but to step outside of your zone, to see the world through the eyes of another, so that you can close the gap. And that was the hardest part for me with this book, was not only coming up with a creative design, but the reason I studied UX was I was looking at, why can't somebody get through a 400-page book? Why can't a student sit in a classroom and get through a textbook? Why can't a student sit in a classroom and get through a lecture? Why can't they do a book report without watching the synopsis on YouTube?
Right.
Yeah, and you start to learn a
They
lot.
have synopses of books on YouTube?
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of a lot of teachers don't necessarily know that their kids aren't reading books, but they're watching it on YouTube. The reason, though, there's a lot of reasons that they can't do it, and so when you start to study what it would take to then get someone to get your message, you realize that everything you know, or everything you thought you knew, you're sort of taken for granted. And what you have to do moving forward is change how you talk. Don't change your vision or your purpose or your soul, but change on how you would present that so that it has the best chance to resonate with somebody and inspire someone.
Yeah.
So I studied how people read, what they look at online, what they share, which I think is the biggest thing here, especially with social and all of these platforms and apps. And what was crazy was that I had to completely relearn how I wrote a sentence.
Wow.
Yeah.
That fundamental.
Fundamental. And the book has shorter bursts of text. I had to translate what a paragraph would have been into a visual so that people can learn it a little bit better that way.
And differently. I know there's all kinds of, my wife was a teacher for a long time, and there's all kinds of different learning styles. And
yes, and so now...
So was your real mission to unpack the mechanism of sharing information, or are you focused on I mean, obviously the content is what you're sharing, but you had to do both things. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Like, you had to unpack how you learn, how you approach it, and what you present it. You talked about the package of the book and all that stuff. Is it is the content also, is it something you just know intuitively and you're just spilling it out there, or did you go through struggles with creating the content that you're going to share with the world?
Yeah, I actually really like that question, because this is my 5th book. The other books, I would say that they're based on experience, research, things that I've done with working with businesses, studying their customer base. So I could literally fill pages,
Sure.
And it'd take a while. It was hard to do, but this was trying to show people intuitively that things are different, and you can't just say it.
Right.
You have to show it. And I had to go and research that. So while I would have loved to have this sort of conceit of accomplishment, hey, this is my 5th one, I should just, you're going to love it because it's my 5th one, something new for me. It wasn't. I treated it like it was my first one, and I didn't take anything for granted. I studied, man, and I'll tell you what blew me away was how little I really knew about what I really believed to be the case.
Sort of, you feel like if you're a 5th-time author, you start figuring that stuff out. So what you're telling me is, I've only done 3 books now, that I've still got a lot to learn in my next 2.
Well, look, man, it's based on the mission, right? I'm trying to take this story out to people who don't, people who know me, but people who don't necessarily know me.
Right.
And it's also a proof point, right? It's, as you're turning the pages, you're going, wow, all right, if I'm a business and I'm trying to embrace all this new technology to tell my brand story, get more customers, build better relationships, it's sort of the same thing. You take for granted the position you have in the world, in society, and in your markets, and you're not really trying anything new, even though these are new opportunities for you.
Yeah, I get it.
So my real mission here was to say, look, if I had to do this, but this is the result, imagine what's possible for you, what opportunities are there for you. And it's really trying to unlock what I hope is creativity and inspiration to get people to try it in a new way.
So let's go tactical for a second. So when someone picks up, wow, that is a beautiful, I just love the feel of it.
It's heavy too.
It's heavy, it's sexy. So tactically, changing the way businesses create experiences. Give me like 5 things, 3 things. I know you probably got some sort of a list in your brain. I'm trying to create a tactic that the folks out there in the internet can say, this is definitely going to make me want to pick this book. What is the essential, like, thesis of this thing?
All right, so it's all in the subtitle.
Okay.
Changing the way that businesses create experiences. If you think about what you do with a product, what you do throughout your day with technology around you, you're essentially capturing and sharing experiences. If you buy a new car like a Tesla S, for example, you did so probably because you wanted to save on gas, but also because you wanted to be part of that lifestyle, and there was an experience associated with that, and you share that. So whether businesses or organizations, musicians, artists, whatever, whether they know it or not, they are creating experiences. And in a connected economy, in a connected society, those experiences are shared. So you're either creating them intentionally, or you're reacting to them. And the thesis of the book is, I believe that as a society, as businesses, that we are actually reacting. We're using new technology to react to experiences.
Got it.
And I think it's an opportunity to create them. So that is why I studied design. Make the book an experience. First of all, wow, it feels great, it looks great, it's beautiful, it's a coffee table book for business. It's an experience. It was designed to be that way, of course, as a proof point. But if you look at just any business, any government, whatever it is, just Kanye West, dropping his new album this week, you could look at that experience he wanted people to have, right? And he put everything he had probably into every song, into the album cover, into the way that it was marketed.
Right.
And then you look at how people experience it and what they're sharing on Twitter, what they're sharing on Vine, Facebook, every community, every blog out there. You can either see parity or disparity between what he wanted you to have as an experience and what people are having and sharing. I actually think there's a lot of alignment. I've been looking into this because I actually see that he was really trying to do something here, and there's a lot of alignment.
Sweet.
But you look at other businesses that don't think about that.
Yeah, it kills me. I fancy myself a little bit of a product person, just emotionally. I can more intuitively pick up a product or use a product and feel if it's starting to feel right. And as we are, I'm actually just going to use CreativeLIVE as an example. I don't know if there's anybody here in the audience that's willing to talk about their experience when you walked in. What did it feel like? Anybody here got the desire or will to talk about that? You're all scared. Like, it's just like, no way, don't call on me. Okay, I won't go to the in-studio audience because they might. But just generally speaking, like, we want it when you come in, you feel welcome, you feel warm. Someone comes and guides you, says, this is where you're going to go today. Serve them a nice meal so they can get comfortable. Tell them where they're going so that they know that they're either in one of the two studios and who they want to see, and they can sit down and fill the seats. That ideally, that they're part of this, they're participating in the process. They feel like they have some sort of ownership and connection to the brand. That's all experience driven, and that's totally on purpose.
Yeah.
And how did you feel walking in here when I called you and said, hey man, I would love to, if you can drop by our studio opening. I think you're one of the best minds in Silicon Valley, drop in. How did it feel to walk in here, and did you feel taken care of?
Yeah, I'll set the stage. There's also a storytelling aspect to all of this as well, right? And I was racing around the block a few times trying to find parking, find the right building, came through the door, Elizabeth greeted me, and I was suddenly at ease. Everything was taken care of. Here's what I need you to do, then come and walk with me, let's get you some water, do you want anything to eat, do you need a desk? Here, we're gonna mic you up at this time, we're gonna sit you down here for this time, Chase is gonna come and get you at this time. It was just real nice, and I was at ease instantly. It was nice.
And so in your book, are there any case studies that you feel like are really germane to what it is that we're talking about, like brands that are creating experiences that are undeniably above and beyond their competition? Yeah,
so there's a lot of little examples in the book of how businesses like Giant Nerd, for example, are tackling things differently, involving the community to help the community become part of not just the experience, but the storytelling experience.
Yeah.
But I intentionally did not put
Good, because that looks like a different business book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because right, everybody would talk in that case about Apple or Nike, and you start to think about, well, what is it about those that are, what are the essences of experience, and what do they do better that everybody else? Because then what ends up happening is saying, okay, well, I need to design my box better so that people feel this, and my casing better, and that's not what this is about. You called it earlier. It's an emotion that you want to unlock. It's a feeling you want somebody to have, and if you do a really, really good job, it's a feeling you want someone to share because that's contagious.
Got it.
And when something emotional and something special is contagious, you don't just sell products, man. You,
Right.
you create a church.
Yep.
And that's what this is about.
Well, I know that's one of the reasons that we filtered the in-studio audience to have people that really wanted to solve real problems that they were having and unlock that, and creating an experience, a brand for one, but also an experience, what that brand stands for. I know was on some of the sort of the resumes that came in from the people who wanted to be here in the in-studio audience. So your book will be a solution for them. I know that there may be, if there's any questions in the in-studio audience, I've got a few pumping in here on my iPad. Give me 1 second here. So raise your hand if you've got one while I get this. But
Yeah, one right there.
Yeah, 1 second here. And we got to find that mic. So grab that mic, and I'm going to line up my next one. Please tell us who you are, what you want to know from this superstar here.
My name's Maggie, and my question is about Apple. It seems as though there's been a bit of a backlash because they've kind of gotten so big, and recently they talked about how they reaffirmed their values and talked about how that's how they've always been and blah, blah, blah. But what's your opinion about kind of the recent backlash against them?
You know, nice to meet you, Maggie. This is a really important question because when Steve Jobs was alive, he ran that company like a leader. Mm-hmm. He had a vision, and he put a COO in charge of a visionary company. And a lot of people lost faith because there wasn't vision being communicated out of the Church of Apple. Mm-hmm. And it almost seemed that he was reporting more to shareholders and stakeholders than he was to an adoring public that actually used Apple products to accomplish things. You know, it's an aspirational brand, and you can't lose that. In fact, it's still missing. You know, you can't fix that with problems, and products. You can't fix that with inspirational videos. You just can't. So they're going to need to fill that role. But the reason that backlash existed is because we are talking about something that's not tangible. No one can put their finger on why. So they're exploring things. They're trying to force Apple to release cache, and we get into conversations that are so far from the center of what that company's soul is all about that we lose sight of what that business represents, right? Now we're talking about share value. Now we're talking about product lines. We're talking about announcements. Apple is going to have to solve for that sooner than later, and I don't know that it's going to come down to IVE. It might, you know, but they're going to need someone to fill that visionary role. Now, in the meantime, though, they have bought time. Those videos about experience, that's what they're talking about. That design is experiential. It's not because it's a beautiful product, but if you look at the imagery in those videos, they are making you get goosebumps. And they're making you remember that you have the iPhone and you can complain about how Samsung's commercials are better. You can complain about how looking at the iPhone compared to the S4 it looks archaic. But then you get into the product conversation that misses the point. Apple changed your life, whether you know it or not. And what you do on a daily basis is because of Apple. Everybody else is just copying. And they might have a faster processor, they might have a bigger screen, but they didn't change your life. They're just augmenting it, and they're competing for your attention.
That is some of the most adroit way of articulating that point about Apple that I've ever heard. Thank you for saying that. Now I know why that's your day job, right? It's like, thinking about that, right? I was just like, wow. I just listened to people talk about that for an hour in London. I was at this very small round table, and they were just going on and on. Nobody said that. So I feel very lucky to have you on the couch. We're short on time, but I got one, I'm getting a bunch of questions that are coming in off the old internet, the information superhighway, if you will. One in particular that I'm going to is Chase always says, be different, not just better. So in this world of non-differentiated products, can you give me a straight answer on what would you prescribe to be different, not just better? And apply it to any field. You know, if you want to go specific, great. But just generally, what's an approach?
Yeah. All right. Well, so one of the things that Chase has talked about is how we've been friends and we've been, admirers of each other's work. So one of the things I'm going to pay it forward for you, man. You've actually been that saying has actually inspired me. You've been an inspiration to me. It's very easy to be better, right? Because hindsight is always 20/20. You can see things the way that people didn't do it, and you could apply it to what you're going to do. It sort of becomes this game of one-upmanship that I think gets us into a real terrible cycle of that is just not innovation at all. When you look at things from a different perspective, and I'm going to share a quote. There is when this book came out, if you go to changethis.com, you'll see a companion ebook that I wrote for free, just to give it away.
Changethis.com.
Changethis.com, and it's called Innovation. Innovation begins here, and it's a picture of a heart. Being different. There's this quote that everybody cites from Henry Ford, that if I would have asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. And I did a lot of research. There's no proof that he actually said that. And we go around.
I'll take it then.
Even the Ford Museum can't pin it down. So one has to assume then at that point that he didn't say it, that it's just a business myth. And so already being different means that I'm not just going to regurgitate that quote that everybody else is quoting just to make my point. I'm actually going to try to track it down. And then you find he never said that, so you're already starting from a different standpoint. And I ended up starting to debunk a whole bunch of quotes from big visionaries and leaders that we see. I'm not going to give it away.
Yeah.
But so being different starts with thinking differently. And I think actually it opens the door to just this genuine flow of inspiration that just starts to unlock creativity, and everything you do in that moment afterwards is not just different for the sake of being different, but it's inspired.
It's inspired, it's meaningfully different.
Yeah, and if you think about it, in an era where everybody's connected, where your whole Twitter feed or Instagram feed is littered with selfies of everyone else who's self-absorbed and in a fun and creative way, you know, this accidental narcissism.
Oh, never mind. Never mind.
This accidental narcissism that's going on is actually forcing people to follow one another, and being different is easy to celebrate.
Where it's at. Man, thank you so much for dropping in. I really appreciate it. Let's review some of your info real quick so people can pay attention to you on the internet. Give them your stats or where you're at. You're at Brian Solis?
Just at Brian Solis on Twitter, briansolis.com on the interwebs.
BRIANSOLIS.
Yes, thank you. And the book is at WTFbusiness.com.
That's awesome. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause to Brian Solis. Thank you so much, Brian. Sweet, buddy. Good one. Are you gonna be able to stick around for us to have a champagne or something?
Of course, I'm all yours. And
okay.
Give this away to somebody on the internet or in the studio.
I will. Thank you so much, B. One more round of applause, folks. Thank you so much.